Excuse me, just starting our meeting, so I'm going to have to ask the audience to be very quiet. So listen, we're going to start, just for everybody that's here, we're just going over the stuff we're just going over the stuff that we need to update, like ASAP, just to bring our regulations up to speed so they're not so outdated as they are. A couple of important areas, obviously, is Dev 1, which I'd like us to cover, which Leslie will talk about, because of the potential that it's the properties for sale. So we want to be able to cover the town and what's happening on the property. And with that, I'll turn it over to Leslie. I'm sorry. This is it. We don't have.
Should we all move up then?
You can do whatever you want, but everyone has to be quiet, and we need to have a meeting. Thank you.
Okay, it's your way to say. So I updated the, it's hard to see up on the screen, but you all have hard copies. You have a copy of the existing zoning regulations that are shown on the screen on the left, and a copy of those on the right. There are two different sets of these. One is for the bulk regulations, the dimensions and things, and the other we'll look at afterwards, which is for uses. For, based upon the meeting with the public, the last meeting, I updated several things based upon things that were discussed and commitments that the commission made, which were to leave the GB zone as it is, not institute a T4 right away at least, and the Dev 1. So we'll be taking a look at those. Everything, those columns have been added back into the spreadsheet on the right-hand side, and with all of the numbers as they exist in your current zoning regulations. And any changes that were made to those, including the GB1A, which you can see on the map is an overlay zone over the GB. And that includes, the one change that's in there is the number of square feet per unit. So in some cases, you'll see that in the spreadsheet, the new spreadsheet, just some of the math has been done to establish what the density is. So it's just math. It's the same as it was in the other zones. In the existing zones, it's just in a different format, so we can look at apples to apples. And the other than restoring those zones, the biggest, really the only other change is to put a limit on the number of square feet in a dwelling unit in the GB overlay zone, 1A. Oh, that was in there? Oh, okay, then you're ahead of me. So those are the changes to the dimensional data. It's basically putting back what's existing now back into the new document.
Right, so basically C, D, BB stays exactly the same, GB stays the same, GBA stays the same. Did I say DB? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I'm not doing anything with Dev 2 right now. I'm not doing anything with B1 now. And the other thing is Dev 1, which I don't know what you're putting in that one. So we're talking about, so the reason we want to put something in Dev 1, you're allowed 55 and over housing in Dev 1 already. And so that's actually not changing. But what we would like to do is have a ratio of housing, and so either 70 or 80% residential to 20 or 30% retail, so that we can get some retail mixed in there, which is going along with the original village project included putting in retail, because we were trying to create like a little green down there. So if the project that's there now gets sold and they want to scrap that application and start a new one, we want to be able to still do something like that. So it's pretty much keeping it the way it is, kind of. Does that make sense?
I don't mean to interrupt, but are we here to be able to hear you, or we're just sitting here? What the hell?
You're sitting here.
Where you don't have a microphone so that we can hear you?
No, we're not.
Why are we here?
I don't really know. Okay, it's a meeting. We're having a meeting. It's a discussion on the zoning regs.
I don't think it's unreasonable to use a microphone.
You used it to tell us to be quiet, use it so we can hear you.
Well, pretty soon, actually, we're just going to clear the room out, so everyone needs to. If you're quiet, you'll hear us.
Oh, that's what we
Are you closing the meeting?
We can't hear you, Jeff. I mean, really, come on. Be very quiet.
I think you're speaking low on purpose. Just use the mic.
I'm not speaking low on purpose.
You're gonna do what you want to do anyway, so.
I can hear her fine.
Okay, Leslie, why don't you?
Okay, so along those lines in the Dev 1 area, what's being proposed is either the 20/80 or the 30/70 split between retail frontage type. And what that means is you have a definition in the regulations for what a shop front is, which is, and we've discussed this before, which is 70% glazing, so that it looks like a shop front. And so that's what you would be regulating, requiring that you have, I recommend either 20% or 30% of that on the first floor for any development there that is tangential to a 55 and over housing. And you'll see the language for that is in the use table, but that's what that is. And that's the major change to your Dev 1 is to, yeah.
So what is it now? So what is it presently?
Right now, you have an approved special permit for housing for 55 and over.
On an exception basis in a certain area of Dev 1,
Yes.
right?
No,
There's a
Dev
site
1,
plan.
all Dev 1, you can put in 55 and over housing.
Understood, okay. But the 70% residential versus 20 or 30% retail, that would be only for Dev 1, correct?
Correct.
That's the proposed change.
And it's really so that whatever development it happens there, if it's a 55 and over, the developer has to put in architecture that would be welcoming to retail and to retail services, so that it's not strictly a housing development and people can walk downstairs and walk half a block and go, pick up a newspaper or whatever. That's
Okay.
it. It is that simple.
Understood.
So the earlier special permit for the village district, that didn't have a specific percent. I mean, I remember that there was retail spaces, there were residential spaces, but it's just that it didn't have a specific percent. Is that correct?
There was a vote,
Okay.
but there was, and that's why they had that whole green in there. That was the
Right.
idea of creating a green, so you could get ice cream and things like that.
And if somebody came in and wanted to build what you've already approved, that is still within the timeline and they could still do that. But if they want to change it, if they want to start tweaking it and making it different, then they would have to comply with this. Make sense?
Understood.
I mean, if somebody buys the project, then it doesn't matter. This is really just to protect the town if someone has a project.
Understood.
That's it on both. That's it on the dimensional. Unless you have any questions, we can move on to uses. Alright. Okay, we went through the use table pretty exhaustively a few months ago, and you can see the colors really are there so you don't get blinded, and you can sort of see between them. For ease of use and convenience, I've added in the A zone and the B zone, I've just put the data in there so that everything's in one chart for all of you and your staff and the public at large. Nothing has changed in A or B. It's just what you have. So in a couple of these on your sheets, you'll see there are some squares that have an A in red. And my question to you really is just what kind of permit, they're allowed, but I want to be very clear about what type of permit you want to acquire for those uses, because it's not clear in your existing zoning regulations. So that is, and again, it's the use division and identification is all based upon the meetings, our discussions of meetings, in terms of instead of things being identified ad nauseum by use, specific use like a laundry or a takeout laundry or a bring-in laundry or and having 5 different kinds of laundry, those would all fall under business and personal service. And then the business and personal service, just like retail and offices and a few other things, are gauged and regulated by how many square feet they take up, which is really the more intrusive part of any use. So after all of those conversations that we had, those are all the same as what we had agreed upon a few months ago. Now it's just, since we're putting a few things back in, it's a question of what type of permit do you want to have certain uses be submitted under? Do you want them to be special exception, site plan, or permit?
Can you go through the ones that you're asking?
Sure. The first one is the commercial farm of over 5 acres in a GB zone. It's really, it's picking one of the 3. Permit, site plan, or special exception. So.
I didn't know it's 5 acre spot.
Yeah, is there really 5 acres there?
In a
Well, I guess
in GB, I think. I don't know. Any idea?
Only if you combined a bunch of
Oh, wow.
parcels together and eliminated structures that were on them.
The advantage of doing a special exception over a site plan is that if you wanted to have some control over, farmland is generally regulated by the state, but you might have things that you want to regulate in terms of stormwater runoff, or there might be something environmental. And there's also a question of where, if at all.
I wouldn't do it as special exception.
Special exception? Okay.
I just don't know how they're gonna get 5 acres in there. This is all sharp hillside.
Just like this color.
Can we whisper a little louder?
not gonna happen.
Then it doesn't matter.
I just don't understand why we're here. If we can't hear what's going on and we're supposed to try to understand, don't shush me.
I'm going to shush you.
You're not gonna shush me.
Meeting.
You're not gonna shush me. Have a good night, and when you can find the time not to be rude and let all of us hear what's going on, then maybe that would work. So, have a good night.
Okay, there will be opportunities for public input, but this was set up as a work session, based upon the comments from the last
Hard to
meeting, so.
input when you can't hear.
There is no input. You don't have input,
No, but we'd
okay,
like
until the
next
day
time
they
when we
choose to
know
let
what's
us have it.
happening.
Are you staying or are you coming with me, Mother?
So,
stay.
under business and personal service,
Good luck, everybody.
your, gross leasable spaces of 1,500, over 1,500, and then over 10,000.
I have my ears in too.
What you've typically done there is for the smaller ones, allowed them just by permit, zoning permit, so it might be and then for the large set, gone in order permits, special permit, special
Public
exception.
forum. You're a public commission. You should at least let everybody hear what you're saying.
meeting, pretty silly
That's why we're here to listen.
Hey, hand out things back there. Have things back
Make sure
there.
the projector and the microphone is a big help.
Glad they're working for us.
I would think that the larger
Yeah. So do you want to follow the same order of permit, site plan, and,
what we've done for the other districts.
yeah, exactly. Okay.
What did we say for the commercial front? Special exception.
Let's see. There's not a lot here. Manufacturing as an accessory use. For instance, something like affixing, badges to sweatshirts. If somebody's, there might be, if it was big enough, it might be considered to be an accessory use, the affixing of badges to sweatshirts. And, it's just an example of sort of small manufacturing. That would be accessory to the major use of selling sweatshirts. Now, it could also be something that is a little bit more, that might require the use of chemicals or, photo processing or something like that.
These are all things that are allowed already and that we're just looking to further regulate.
You're just clarifying the kind of permit that would be required if somebody wanted to come in and do this kind of thing. It's already allowed.
So which one are we on now?
Manufacturing as an accessory use.
What good would a site plan do on something like that?
I think the site plan itself probably wouldn't do any good. I think you really are looking at whether it's something that,
Be permitted or special exception?
yeah, yeah. And then it's a case of, what is it? And you can't put every possible thing that could be done that way. I guess I think my recommendation would be that you do a special exception. Somebody could be in and out of here in 30 seconds if it's sewing badges on sweatshirts, but you might want to take a more in-depth look if it's something that involves chemicals. It's really a protection.
Makes sense to me.
Under motor vehicle uses, vehicle sales and rental and repair. Again, it's just clarifying, every other place that you have in town that has that use is a special exception. I would keep it that way. Public uses and public utilities. Public use and substations and structured parking garages. I would, I recommend sort of sticking with what you've got there and continuing with special exceptions for both of those.
With the substation.
Is that the Tesla clause?
Yeah, could be. Although this section is actually for public use, but yeah, could be. Okay, down to retail. Again, similar to what we were talking about before, these are regulated by the amount of gross leasable space. Your smaller ones, it makes sense to have permits. They tend to turn over faster as well. And then moving up the food chain, so to speak.
Follow what we've done in all the other districts.
Everybody okay with that?
Yeah, what's
Permit.
And your liquor establishment is, can't imagine you wouldn't want a special exception for that. And then the last one is your wireless communications, and everything else is a special exception.
Should be the same.
That's it.
Leslie, I have one question for
Yeah.
you. Under the current regs in GB, they do allow professional, financial, and commercial offices. So under office building in 3.3N, should there be
Your business, I'm sorry, read to me the first thing you said.
okay. Under the existing regulations and general business, it says one of the uses specifically allowed is professional, financial, and commercial offices. So
That's just under offices. It's under,
is it under office building? Because we don't have any uses in that part of this table. That's the only reason I'm asking.
yeah, office building, including medical.
Okay, so we
Yeah.
need to put something in there because we currently don't have anything?
Well, it would be regulated by the size, not by the use, because there's not really a difference between,
I understand that, but we have currently no permits required for office buildings in GB.
oh, I see what you're saying. I'm sorry, I misunderstood you. Okay,
Because that would be different than retail.
yes, thank you. Do the same as you've done in the other zones with that same progression.
So what are we saying, the office buildings are all
The
permanent?
smaller they are, their permit, and then site plan, and then special exception.
These jump bigger more quickly. So it looks like we go from permit, right, to special exception.
First two would be permanent?
I don't know.
Wow.
No, it goes from site plan to special exception. You can't put an office building up just with a permit. Or move an office in.
So it's just that, this says 10,000 to, so 1,500 to 10,000 square feet of gross leasable space. When we're that big, when we're 5 to 10, in retail, it's a special exception.
You have more traffic in and out, and more of a turnover in an office building. There's not as much activity. People go, they park their car, they go inside and stay there. It's a quieter, less intrusive use.
Okay. So we go permit, site plan, and special exception for the last two, I guess, %.
So if we're looking at the office section,
Oh, no, site plan.
yeah, site plan for the
sorry.
first two.
Yep, got it.
And then because the GB1A is just an overlay, anything that is allowed in a GB1, in the GB zone, transfers to the GB1A unless it's overruled by the overlay regulations.
And under 3.3JJ, currently, we've had, the commission has allowed places of worship there, but it's been through, not special exception, that catch-all that's there that says other uses similar that requires a public hearing, so since that section no longer exists, should places of worship be by special exception also?
Places of worship have to be allowed anywhere that residential is allowed by state statute. So,
But this is GB. We had a request a while ago for a place of worship on the second floor of the bank. Right?
And you also
it was
have
within
one
a certain distance of an establishment that served liquor, which is against the regs, so we had to make a special exception, right?
Is the place of worship still above the teen center?
It's still at the teen center, and so the place of worship isn't dictated by the liquor establishment. The liquor establishment is dictated by where the house of worship is.
Right.
So we did allow the place of worship on the second floor of the bank. And we did allow the place of worship at the teen center. So the only question is, do you want to allow them there, but under special exception? Because one of the things that you looked at was, hours of worship and parking and all that other good stuff.
Sure. There's any other others, why couldn't we do it the same way here?
So what I'm looking at is allowing places of worship, so you'd have to allow them in a GB1A by state statute because there's residential.
Right, but they've also allowed them where there was no residential at all.
That's the extra, that's the gravy.
Okay.
Okay.
So what are we doing? Just so I know what I'm putting in here.
So special exception in the GB1A,
It's just GBA.
oh, GBA, okay.
And in GBS.
And in GB also, and GB
Right, yeah,
anywhere.
right. I didn't understand why you said GB because A
No, I was
rolls over
just,
from
I was
GB.
just, I was
Okay.
just correcting that it's not GB1A, it's GBA. Vehicle storage.
Yep.
3.32, currently they do allow it in GB. Because it says public garages for the storage and repair of automobiles or parking lots.
So in GB,
You don't have Dev 2 on here.
it's the SD,
It's what?
it's SD1. I'm sorry, Chris, I'm trying to catch up with you.
It's in section 3.3, II, I
Yeah.
guess. It says vehicle storage, see outside storage, and we don't have anything in there. And currently, in the existing regs, under item 4, it says public garages for the storage and repair of automobiles or parking lots. So I don't know, do we need to add anything in there or no?
Vehicle sales is being looked at differently than vehicle storage.
Right.
So, and the outside storage refers to the text description after this chart.
But there's nothing in here that says it's an allowed use or not. So currently it's allowed, and so by leaving it vacant, then it's not allowed, correct?
Correct.
So, what does that do to the new trailer place?
It makes it non-conforming.
From the gas station. Gas stations.
Yep.
No, you're right, it is allowed. Okay, so do you do it by special exception or site plan?
Is that what it is now?
No, that's what I would like it to be. You don't want all kinds of outside fuel storage.
Yeah. So, in both.
Special exception for both of those?
Yes.
Great.
When you said for both of those, that means for as accessory use too?
Yeah.
Got it.
Well, I was saying in both zones, actually.
Right, it's, I'll carry everything from GB
Got
into
it.
GB1, or GBA.
And under residential, because we now have GBA, which allows apartments of no bigger than 650, should that be laid out in that section 3.3 LL, which addresses residential uses?
It is in your bulk section is the 650 square feet.
But does the use have to get recognized in the use table?
Accessory dwelling unit is part of a mixed use up to 4 maximum. Okay. And that's only in the GBA.
Correct.
And what kind of permit would you like for that? Or did you approve for that? Wasn't, the type of application wasn't clear to me.
I think we had it in a special exception. I think it was a special exception.
Okay? What else you got?
Not at the moment.
Now, where did you put that under the 650? Did you put it in the use table?
In the bulk. What's that number? Thanks, Chris.
I guess one last thing, under food service, we do have restaurants that are in GB.
Special exception?
Why don't we have special exception for a restaurant?
If it's a McDonald's or something.
Type of restaurant. Okay.
Okay, special exception.
Food service.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, currently we have, under that food service thing, we have all 4 types that exist in general business.
The difference you'll find is that if somebody's moving into an existing restaurant where it's just a continuation of use, that's not generally a big deal. If somebody is coming in and with a totally new type of restaurant that you may want to be able to have oversight in terms of what they're doing, in terms of the site, what they're, and I'm trying to think of a good example off the top of my head, but other people are far more creative. They come in with things that you've never heard of, and so it's the, special exception is a good check on that.
We do have catering facilities, outdoor dining. Well, we did have outdoor dining, it closed, but we did allow one. And we do have places that have takeout food service, so should those all be special exception?
You're talking about cats.
No, that's not, GB, there's,
Every restaurant's takeout.
Right,
but you have what used to be Dine 11, whatever it is now, that's in
If you
Sullivan
exclusively take out, you might want to have a say over it, right?
You might want to look at their traffic patterns and where people can, are people driving through to pick up their takeout, are they parking? The other thing you could do is add a section on continuation of use, where if it's just a continuation of use and there's no change to the site plan, that it can just be done with a zoning permit. So,
Yeah, that seems to make sense.
Joe's restaurant becomes Jane's restaurant, and nothing's changing except for, the sign and the menu. It may not require coming here if it's, one takeout restaurant for another takeout restaurant, same idea. If it's just a continuation of use, you could probably do just a zoning permit and make it easier for people to come in and do business here. You might want to, but if they're building a new restaurant, or expanding an existing restaurant, that's a little different. So we could add something on
I would
that.
buy that.
Make sense?
I think so, sure.
So I would actually recommend doing that for all of the uses, so that, again, if something's, if somebody's buying a dog kennel and they're still running a dog kennel, it's the same thing, just under new ownership. Why waste everybody's time? Unless they're making changes.
That makes a lot of sense.
And then I guess one last thing that's in there
One
is,
second, let me just make a note.
time's up.
Would discourage any businesses by having a special exception?
Well, in this case, because it's going to be continuation of use, I think that we're not.
Okay, Chris?
Under animals, where it says veterinary office and veterinary hospital, we do currently have a veterinary office. I'm not sure that they board cats overnight there or not, but we do have at least the veterinary use
Okay.
in that district. So we would need to, if they want to, I'll still continue allowing that, allow that.
In Div 1?
No,
Oh,
we had the
Another
cat.
strip.
GB.
Next set of
Yeah.
names.
Yep.
There's
You talking
pets
about
and
in
nails,
GB?
and there's the cat place.
That's in GB. And,
It's nice, sort of counts.
Yeah.
and Dr. Broderick, before he purchased the property in Litchfield, had his on Amity Road.
So do you want to do a site plan?
Or is that continuation of use?
If somebody wanted to come in and put in, say, a competing, not taking over the same one, but something in that zone, it's already in the zone, so you don't want to make it non-conforming. So it's just what kind of permit would you want it to be?
What did we do up in Dev 1 when that veterinary clinic was built? That was Craftsman style, like the house across the road, that's, right? That's not for sale? We spent a lot of time talking about that one, so that must have been a special exception.
Where was it?
It's right across from, it's on Litchfield Turnpike.
Oh, but they didn't.
No, they did build it, it's now for
Oh.
sale.
Oh, yeah.
No, they're just leasing part of it.
Okay, but when we talked about that, that was a new structure. How did we do it? I think it was a
That-
special exception. We spent a fair amount of time talking about it.
It either came in under office, which I don't, because I don't have the file here, which is an allowed use, or it fell under the Town Planning and Zoning Commission could upon formal application allow other uses. In which case you had a hearing and a special permit. But without the file being here, I can't tell you which one.
I thought you were talking about one next to the animal shelter.
No, that was the more recent one. I was talking about the one a while ago, because it really was a veterinary building and not a boarding. Though they do, I think, board sometimes. I don't know. I don't know what to do with that.
The times that you might have, you probably have fewer issues if you have a detached building. It's a single building on its own site, but if it's in if it's in a plaza, like I think the other one is, you might have people who have offices or businesses on either side that might be concerned about it.
Well, maybe we do what we did in the other districts, right? So if it's the
It's
office
just
with no
site.
boarding, it's just a site plan. If it's overnight boarding, we have a special exception. Right? I mean,
Sure.
I guess I have one other question. Under recreational and fitness, commercial, in that area, we have the bowling alley, which is recreational, and at one point, we had a CrossFit, which was also recreational, but we don't identify it as being a use.
We still have it?
CrossFit isn't there, but the bowling alley is.
Yeah, but we have a CrossFit right down near where Wheelers used to be, right? That was only recent that they.
No, they're gone.
Oh, they're gone already?
They're both special exception in other zones. They sort of fall, they're not that dissimilar in terms of the amount of in and out traffic as some retail, sort of mid-level retail.
So it sounds like we should do it in another one.
Yeah, if it's special exception in other zones, it should be in for this one too.
Okay. There we go.
It gives us that last bit of control.
Anything else, Chris?
That's all I caught at the moment.
Thank you. If we're good with these, I will go back and redo all of the whole rest of the document to change up.
In 3.3 QQ, I thought we weren't doing 200,000.
I think you're right, I think we went to 150, is that right?
100.
100? 100. Good.
Well, 100 is about the size of the Whole Foods shopping center.
Down on the bus run, holes, like that.
What's the existing right now?
Existing what?
Limit?
Yeah.
I don't know. What is the
I don't know that you have one.
I don't think we do.
So it could be 1 million square feet right now.
It's,
Probably no.
yeah, it's,
I don't think we
this
have-
is
I don't
a
think we
good,
have-
there isn't, I don't
Yeah,
believe there is
there's no
one.
limit.
This is actually a very good example of the difference between use-based and form-based zoning. You're just talking about retail, and you're not talking about the difference between a mom and pop shop and a Home Depot. Retail is retail. When you're looking at form-based codes, you're looking at the impact of the size of the retail as well as the type. So,
So you're saying we want to limit it to 100,000, not 2?
Right, 2 units. Like Jenny mentioned. It's also wasn't brought to the attention of the public.
Sure.
So, I mean, to be honest with you, shopping center the size of what the Whole Foods shopping center is 100. I don't think we really want to look at anything bigger than that. Anybody else have any comments on this?
Leslie, I thought, oh, there it is. In 3.3 RR, it says sale of firearms, and it's listed by special exception under what's titled the T4.
and that should be the,
It should be GB.
yeah.
Yeah, we want to make this business in place ready, it's held in the closet.
Yeah.
That's why it's red.
think in some of these zones we're allowed multifamily. We're allowed two families.
In C and D.
So let me see the one here.
C and D are the only places you can have multifamily?
Only two-family.
Two family.
Oh, two.
Yeah, do you want to separate the events? Say two family or just multifamily?
There's two-family in here.
Oh,
Um,
I'm just not looking at it.
It's right under single-family.
Oh, yeah, I see.
So it should be in 2-3C and T3D.
What did you say?
I'm sorry.
It should be in T3C and T3D.
Sorry, 2, 3, 6.
C, yeah, so we need to add it to the next column.
And what about D?
That is, this, D is,
Did you say
There's
D?
two yellow ones.
Okay, sorry.
yep, and then BB is just, and then we need to add single family into that third yellow column, which is BB, because that's all that's allowed. So in the ST1, there are uses that are not, which is currently Dev 2. There are different uses in here than what's currently allowed.
That's based upon the conversation that we had, that the commission had several months ago when we really exhaustively went through all of this.
Let's quickly go down that. Quick.
Okay. Because I think the most critical thing you've got is in the residential section, 3.3 LL. You're allowing single-family houses, two-family houses, and currently there's no residential in that section.
Yeah, so we don't want to change that. We don't want to do that in this round.
Okay. So I'm going to take out all of the residential, including accessory dwelling units
And
as part of the mixed use.
And I didn't catch that, what did you say? I would take out all, there's no residential over there now, I don't think we should, we're not gonna put residential in there now.
Okay,
There isn't, and there, we shouldn't.
okay. We won't.
There currently is no retail on that side, so 3.300.
You used to have retail there
No.
when Perkins was there a long time ago.
And what's the stone place?
There's no
Perkins
retail.
had like art supply, caning supplies and basket making.
Yeah, they're not there anymore.
Yeah,
They used to be.
I can't think of any retail that's in there. There's a wholesale, the building that you go straight at when you go down Bradley, that has wholesale stuff.
Yeah, but you can walk in there and buy stuff.
Yeah,
But also, how about the stone place?
it's the stone place.
The slab with take a
Oh.
look.
Well, he doesn't operate as a retail, whatever you want to do.
And then also, well, I'm just trying to think of what's there and what's not there.
You can go in there and buy gas for your grill,
Is that
right? I
right?
think so.
And that's also where,
Right. So that's
isn't that where
retail.
the caterer is?
It's the caterer, yep.
So there is retail there.
Okay.
I guess that's what.
So no residential.
We have lodging in there, and I don't,
Where's that?
on 3.3 CC.
But that's not allowed now.
I'm just double checking. What we allow now is wholesale, I apologize, we do allow wholesale and retail stores, professional, financial, and commercial offices. Step 2. Offices for executive, administrative, or professional purposes, or laboratories for scientific research, assembly, fabrication, and finishing of articles of small size. So we don't have any hotels or anything currently in there.
So, let's see that.
Okay.
I don't really want to change anything in there this round anyway. We'll decide to do it later.
And in that section above it, we also don't have the congregate communities, assisted living, rehab.
Yeah. So it's not in here either.
What about the rehab facility outpatient? Oh, it says the office building, never mind. Occasionally, I can't read my own writing even when it's typed.
And then I guess under health facility on page 1, we still list nursing home in there. Three point three Z.
Oh, that's something different. Isn't this what we've permitted recently?
So are they not allowed?
No, they're in Dev 1.
That was the thing that said.
That's the one next to the animal shelter.
Okay, so I'm just gonna move that over then.
Yeah.
So, and also, Kathleen points out that the kennel, we do allow in Dev 1. 3.3F.
2. That's 2. Right. Special exception.
Commercial, the first one.
3.3.f, the residential kennel, residential no more than 10 animals, right? Because we allow.
Well, this is residential, because this is residential.
So you're saying it's animal daycare and or commercial kennel, so it's 33B
Yeah.
and not 33F.
Which
Got it.
actually she has in there.
Right.
No, wait, now I'm confused.
Okay. Well, you shouldn't be, it's right.
That's right? Oh,
Really.
no, I'm not confused at all. I knew it all the time.
Yeah.
Just testing it.
Giving him, right, chicken juice.
But then we should have veterinary office and veterinary hospital in Dev 1, which we don't have.
Right. Because we have a veterinary clinic in Dev 1.
3.3H and 3.3F.
Same type of,
site plan and special exception. But the one that's there now is the continuation of use, so they wouldn't have to come to us, right?
Pre-existing.
Yes.
Pre-existing.
Yes, but if somebody wanted
But in
to,
that one building.
Only in that one.
only in that same space,
You only
right?
need so many of that. Just.
So T4 is, are we using T4? Or, okay,
It's just a placeholder.
okay. So we don't have anything for B and I.
That's correct. Yeah. Oh, Lucy Street.
We don't have any use, I mean, we don't have any uses listed for BI, we only have
There's
uses
no
listed
column
for
there.
Oh, yeah, we
T4.
need a column.
Okay,
But it's just exactly what's allowed now.
okay.
So we also need to add that to the table of general bulk regulations too. So to correct the bulk regulations under SD1, where it talks about residential density, we need to remove those two.
I'm sorry, Chris, once more.
On the table of general bulk regulations, under SD1, we list residential densities,
Right.
so we need to drop that.
Fine.
And these other things are just the same as what we have now.
Just double check it.
40%, 60%.
Lot widths are different in this table than what is currently existing for Dev 1 and Dev 2, which Dev 2 being SD1. Because in Dev 1, it's 150, and on the bulk table, it says 100 linear feet max. And in Dev 2, it's 175 feet, and it says 100 linear feet max.
There was. Something else, I took the word conservative, that was known because there was something else that contradicted it.
Just looking at the existing bulk table.
Mm-hmm.
Right, building, so the building areas. I know there it is, sorry.
So then, under building coverage, if that's similar to maximum building area, which is different than total impervious coverage, in Dev 1, it's 25%,
Yeah, that's there.
but in Dev 2, it's 30%. And I think the lot coverage impervious needs to remain not applicable at this point, because you don't have one in your existing regs. And then also the expression line height. Side setback. Side yards in Dev 2 are 30 feet. And rears are 30. And then you would have to, not applicable, the frontage build-out.
I'm sorry, what was the last one, Chris?
Oh, I'm sorry, on frontage build-out for SD1, it's not applicable. And then under the under accessory setbacks, it says 25-foot minimum building setback, but it would be 75 feet because it couldn't be in the front yard.
The rear setback, you're saying is 75?
The front yard setback, it can't be in the front yard currently. Don't appear to have any setbacks unless we apply the existing rear and side yards for accessory buildings, because there isn't anything called out. It just says main building minimum floor areas.
Right, and some of this is just trying to,
Yeah,
try
so I'm
to-
just trying to, go through and make sure
So
that it's
that,
conform.
as with, so for instance, in the, never mind.
Dev 2 right now has 2 stories.
The new one has 3.
Should be two.
Should be
We're not
2.
changing that.
Yeah, so the max is 2. And in Dev 1, we would need to insert that the max is 3.
It's there.
That's here.
Is it?
Yeah, it's the last line of the,
Oh, that's T4.
No, T4 says
oh
45
no, you're
foot.
right, Dev 1, no, she's right, it's up there. Right? Yeah, here, down here, maximum stories.
Yeah,
It
got
has
it.
to have it here,
Oh, I was looking here.
yeah. So, 3 max. Just list a bit of them, it kind of makes sense that one's a minimum. It can't get smaller. It just say, I know, but it just seems like silly.
Once upon a time, we were identifying places where 2 would be smallest. That's where it came from.
So basically, you have a lot of cross-checking to do, to make sure you didn't miss anything.
And it's the full document, it's not just,
Yeah.
yeah, not just these charts. This is the easy part. These become the cheat sheets for the rest of the document. We make drive-throughs a separate,
No, it's alphabetical.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, that needs to-
I'm well aware.
Sorry.
But, doesn't that address banks and,
any drive-through.
Yeah,
So they should be
So it should be special exception
Right.
in GB,
right,
in GBA.
right.
And Dev 1,
We could have a bank, we were gonna have a bank there, so yes.
Do we already have a bank there?
No, but
Well, you had 245 Amity.
there was gonna be originally a bank.
No, then it became a bakery,
And it became a restaurant.
and then it became a restaurant, bakery and restaurant.
But I understand there might be an application for a drive-through pharmacy there.
Oh, and then there was a pharmacy there too?
There was,
Yeah.
but they,
Wasn't,
Didn't
yeah,
say
they didn't
that.
last long.
okay.
What we sent you?
Then a drive-in would be a special exception for a bank, right?
And anything.
Anything, anything that could be, any drive-in, right, okay.
Drive-through.
Drive-through, drive-in.
So you're saying add it to Dev 1?
Yep, got it.
Drive-through Dev 2?
In outdoor dining, between G and GBA. And also a restaurant.
That's what we talked about, so she's gonna,
Yep, I think I've got it on there.
All right.
Why is grooming a separate line? That's a grooming establishment. Because some of these, facilities would have grooming as a part of the line.
Thank you. Then we apply for an application for each use.
We said, I thought we said special exception. No, P for continuation of use or a special exception, right? Didn't we say that for all the food establishments in GB?
Any
It's gonna-
continuation of use will be a zoning permit.
Right, it's a P, but then otherwise it's a special exception, correct? Isn't that what we said?
I'm sorry for.
So it seems to me you list special exception. It's over there.
Right, because in the regs it's going to say it's a permit if it's.
Sorry, for which use is that?
Catering facility and food processing.
We've had site plan everywhere.
I know.
Oh, right.
We have a provision that if a use is abandoned for a period of time, it won't automatically be a continuation.
that's non-conforming uses and it's not allowed by court cases.
So for food, you think we should do what we do in all the other categories in GB? Site plan, permit, site plan, site plan? Yeah?
They are sort of different uses as opposed to progressive in the big food service. Your outdoor dining is, I guess, I think the first one makes sense, it's site plan.
And you have permit and not site plan. Right, because over here we do, we're going to follow this rationale, we're going to move more. Outdoor dining is the one we actually want to see the site plan to see where it is in relation to roads and parking. We're talking about that with place on the draft. So I don't know.
I'm surprised outdoor dining is just a permitted, just a permit. Because of noise issues and so forth, maybe there's other regulations covering that, but.
I remember talking about
Well,
barriers.
actually, they do talk about,
Yeah,
we do
safety
talk to them about,
issues. Yeah.
safety, and we also talk about music
Yeah,
and lighting.
yeah.
So why is it permitted? Just a permit? I don't think we have that. I think when it comes to us, we talked about all of them.
Right, so it's.
So how did
it's
it
their
come to
request.
us if it's just a permit?
Well, they have to request all these things in the permit, so we get to discuss it. Right?
If there was more site plan.
It would be a site plan, that wouldn't be a permit, that would be a site plan.
Yeah.
It happens at a time.
So there's been.
Outdoor dining should really be site plan.
So all of them are saying.
All the way across.
Yeah, that's what I would say.
I think one of the reasons we had it as a permit is because of the character that we were looking to develop in some of these areas, and now we're bringing them back to.
It's other considerations, how close to the road, the barrier, the lighting.
Yeah,
And we would lose control over that if it was just a permit.
yep,
It's not saying we don't
It's all
want
here.
people to come in
No, no, no.
to those areas. We just want to understand it.
Yep.
So,
Right. And then we heard last time that people were upset about hearing the people from Willow's going out and taking a smoking break.
Yeah.
In their residential neighborhood, this is the same sort of thing. We want to
Right.
help to control the noise.
okay, so all outdoor dining permits are site plan.
Restaurants or site plan all across and takeout services.
We made restaurant in GB a special exception a few minutes ago, half an hour ago.
Right.
Yes, we did.
But otherwise, special exception.
So do you want to keep it that way for Dev 1 and SD 1?
More reflection, I think the takeout could be site plan too. It's a drive-through that we have the special exception for.
That's related to the issue you brought up earlier, Leslie, of traffic patterns and what it does to the area.
So are we leaving restaurants in the Dev 1 and SD 1 as site plan?
Yep.
Okay. It's the same as Dev 2. It's the big purple one on the right.
Special exception for takeout, right?
So on the restaurant side, and McDonald's could move in there, that's what we're saying, they'd have to do a site plan. Right, but it wouldn't be a special exception to have a fast food restaurant.
Except if they wanted a drive-through, there would be a special exception.
Which is a
That's
couple
good.
lines above.
No, what if Hooters moved in there?
Different issue.
It's a whole different set of rules.
Okay. Wait, hold on, you said something different though, Jeff. Right?
We were saying the same thing, just using different words.
Yeah, I know, I'm just a little bit more fried, so people know what we're talking about.
It's the,
Understood.
it's a restaurant, it's a restaurant, it's a restaurant. Now, if it's a restaurant with additional services of some sort, then
Understood.
comes under a
I
whole other
understand. I just like
category.
it, I understand, okay.
All right, so takeout service in
Special
GB.
exception all the way across. I mean, for GB, Dev 1 and Dev 2,
For which one?
takeout food service.
All right.
So we can control
Yeah.
the traffic flow.
I agree.
Takeout is defined as exclusively takeout if they have if they have seating in there.
I don't know why you would take out.
Or Subway.
I don't want to take out as considered special.
What is the
Is it one of
drive-through?
our definitions?
It is. But
I think your takeout could be just site plan, and your drive-through is special exception. I think that's more the distinction, but whatever you all like.
Restaurant drive-through, that definition from restaurant fast food. We don't have restaurant takeout in our definitions.
It's a separate service. So you could have a restaurant with takeout, you could have a restaurant with drive-through, you could have a restaurant with takeout and drive-through separately. They'd basically be coming in for the most restrictive type of permit.
It's just that we define our fast food restaurant.
quick sale.
So can somebody tell me what we're doing on takeout food service so that I'm sure that I have this correct?
I guess I don't understand why we have it as a separate category when we don't have it as a definition in our regs,
Right.
right? We have fast food as a definition in our regs,
And I can see drive-through.
And we have drive-through as a
See,
definition.
I don't really understand the takeout food. Every restaurant you can go in and get takeout. So give me an example of why it
Some
doesn't
place,
work.
you might have like a little hole in the wall that is only takeout, where you want to make sure that they have enough parking for, 2 or 3 cars. And I think.
Okay, so we're
parking
thinking
visits-
that it's a restaurant that has takeout, and really we're putting it in here in case there's a place that's just going to do takeout.
For instance, Blessings to
So
Go
we
on
don't have
Whitney
it.
Avenue.
Yes, we don't have it now, but we could. So it
Right.
makes sense in special.
Right, which is the reason we do it.
Right.
Okay, I'll buy it.
Okay, so now tell me what kind of.
Well, it can be a site plan, or, well, it could be, hey, you have a special exception here. Let's do that. Is that cool?
Special exception?
I don't feel too strongly about it either way. There aren't gonna be too many of these coming down to the, anywhere.
His last words.
Yeah.
Hey, if there are, get lots of dinner options.
So it's interesting that drive-through isn't defined in the regs. We have a restaurant drive-through.
Drive-through is above that on the chart.
Up on the definitions.
Right, but in the definitions, we say restaurant, comma, drive-through, but we don't define drive-through, because we mentioned, I think Jeff mentioned a bank, that's a drive-through. Right?
That drive-through's all things drive-throughs, right?
This drive-through in this chart is all drive-throughs, banks.
Everything.
So that's everything.
Understand.
Yes.
Okay, it's just drive-through, isn't it?
Okay. There are plenty of things that are not in your definitions that
Drive-through like an
Okay.
obvious thing on what it is, that's what.
I'm hoping,
Okay,
but,
I think it is.
but I'll add it if you want.
I don't think so.
I think it's not. This is my pen.
Use it.
It's not like you can have it.
Oh, it's not working, you're gonna have
It's
it.
fine, it's fine.
Anything else?
Oh, good.
You take the cheap. This one.
I'm good, we should probably just go through it one, I mean, not now, but.
So what is the process?
So the next thing we need to do is set up a public hearing, which there'll be microphones set up, where people, public can speak.
We have to approve, no, we have to have a vote to approve it first? By us?
No, that's what we're
Just
doing
for the
usually.
public- and
We're
then
setting up a
after.
public hearing and then after the public hearing, because we're gonna get comments at the public hearing.
Right, but can we see it in final form before we set up the?
Yeah, it has to go to the.
So-
Has to go to council
Yeah, it still has to go
governments.
to council of governments. So
Before or after?
I now have,
before
It has
the
to,
public hearing.
before
and they have 65 days?
35 days.
35 days to review it?
Has to be submitted 35 days in advance of the hearing.
Meeting was canceled this month, by the way. No,
Because there was nothing to do.
nothing on the agenda.
I am away most of May.
Oh, so when are you leaving? Otherwise, you have to get it done before May. Just saying, because we kind of need this
I understand.
for all the reasons you already know.
I understand. Let me take a look at my calendar and get back to you. I actually made vacation plans a year ago.
It counts. You still have to get permission on it.
That's not as good. Okay, I am going to get final a draft as I can, as
Sure.
fast as I can.
Sure.
um, with all of these changes. Cross-reference them all through the existing document. And get them to Chris to get to all of you. Does that make sense to everybody?
Yes. Tomorrow?
Tomorrow night, exactly.
All right. Okay.
Yes,
When we have the public hearing,
I'll let
it might be
Leslie
a good
do
idea
it
to
and then
compare
I'll run through it one more time.
for the audience.
But I'm gonna
where
go
we
through
were
this
in the
one
last
more
public
time.
hearing to where we are now, what changes
Yeah.
have
Have
been-
at it.
So this just came in this afternoon.
Honestly, it's one of those things where, it's like when we first started this and, everybody said, oh, well, let's do a track changes, except it means everything would be crossed out and everything would just be rewritten. It's just,
But to highlight the major changes. for
yeah,
the
well, the
concerns
major
of the-
changes are that we are keeping
Of the
the
audience.
existing. Yes, I will do the best I can on that.
What are you asking?
When we have the next public hearing, we have a lot of opposition to the draft we presented. And I would like, at the next public hearing, that there be a comparison of the major changes, what we changed from the last presentation to the new presentation.
Oh. Well, wouldn't it be better to move on from that and do
Well, I think the
changes
people
are from exist? Because I think everybody had a lot of false information last time, so.
Right.
So we would be better, why wouldn't we just say,
This is the new one.
these are the changes? No,
These are the changes.
These are the
From existing
changes from
regs.
existing, not changes from our last look.
There was so much opposition present at the last,
I get it, but as soon as someone reads it,
so you think.
well, I mean, I don't know what to say. C's not changing, D's not changing, BB's not changing, Dev 1's not changing, GB's not changing, GA's not changing. We're getting definitions, and we're getting administrative stuff in here. That doesn't affect anybody, except,
Well, that should be made clear then.
well, I tried.
The other thing is how long of a period of time will there be between when these changes get published, if you will, and the meeting? Like, if people have a week or two to look at it before the public meeting, I think it gives people a chance to talk about it and then have questions, instead of maybe coming out right away. So,
That's up to all of you.
right?
You're the one taking the vacation, just saying.
Jeff, the thing is, when we send it to the Council of Governments, I have to have the draft
Right.
that's going to public hearing available, so
So it's, so
So
everybody can
people
start-
will have to see that.
there will be,
People can
there
go
will be a
online.
time frame.
That's my
extended
point,
time
yes,
frame.
okay, so people can look at it and see exactly
Correct.
what it is. Good.
Let me just ask one other question, sorry. In Dev 1, we talked about allowing adult daycare, which makes sense.
Where is it?
Under daycare, the first one?
Yeah.
Do you want it to be site plan or special exception? I think a site plan actually is plenty.
I think it's fun too. And that also is going in GB, GBA. Yeah.
Not GBA. Oh, yeah, sorry.
You're just testing this.
I'm testing myself. Okay?
Yeah, so ideally,
Yeah, a week from today.
yeah.
It's a joke, just in case anybody.
Well, maybe they're gonna move May then. Okay, that would help you, I guess.
Okay, everybody has my email address and my phone number. If not, you can get it through.
From Chris, right?
Chris,
All right.
just if you have any questions or anything,
Thank you, sir.
I'd rather
Start bringing up
get as
things
much
that people thought that were
done, and if you send it to me in an email, I've got it.
Sure.
Well, I will.
It's a line of fire.
Yeah, that's it. Well, I told you that, I said, could make the meetings, I said, it's okay that we can vote each year and abstain. Okay, cool. So, so we'll see everybody next week.
Any motion
No.
to adjourn?
I think it's-
Not next week, week after.
You wanna make a motion to adjourn?
I would like to do that.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.